Good morning, Morai Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Zera Shimshon Shiur on Sunday morning. And this has been dedicated by the Rosh Gadolian family, the Suleiman Tehrani families, and the Balanes family, that there should be a zchut for them, should be a zchut for all those who need Shidduchim and Zera Shel Kayama, especially for Eldad ben Yaakov, Bracha bat Marceldina, Benyamin ben Reuben, Devorah bat Rachel, Ariel Yochai ben Afsaneh, that they should have Zera Shel Kayama. Amen. So we are going to study Zera Shimshon in Parashat Toldot. Ot Yud is what we're going to focus on. The reason I chose this is because this is the one that alludes really to the essence of Yaakov Avinu, and the reason that Yaakov Avinu became the main father of Am Yisrael, the Mitato Shaloma El, all of his children are basically the Shiftei Gad, the 12 Shvatim, whereas Avraham had a psul of Ishmael, Yitzchak had the psul of Esav, and only part of their Zera became the progenitors of Klal Yisrael. By Yaakov Avinu, all of his children became Shiftei Gad. He is the Bechir Shebe'avot, as we call it, the chosen one of Avot, and we are called Bnei Israel because Israel is the name of Yaakov Avinu. Now, what was the midah of Yaakov? Of course, we know that Avraham Avinu is associated with Chesed, Yitzchak Avinu is associated with the midah of Kivura, and Yaakov Avinu is the midah of Tiferet, which is the midah Emet. Now, this is mentioned, of course, in Micha, in Navi Micha, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Chaf, Titen Emet LeYaakov, Hesed Aram, that the Pasuk that we all know is really about the midah of Yaakov Avinu being midat Emet, and we have it really in much of the literature is mentioned and explained. For instance, you have a Sefer Gan Naul from Rav Avulafia, a Kabbalistic work, and he explains this in a tremendous way, tremendous layers after layers of depth of how Yaakov Avinu has the name of the Keter of Shechina, the name of Yud Kevav, the Yud, in the beginning of his name Yaakov, in the beginning of his name Yisrael. And even Yehuda, which we are called Yehudi because of that, it very much has that element, and it relates to it as we're going to explain Be'ezrat Hashem. So the midah of Emet is the midah of Yaakov Avinu, is a Jewish midah, and it's not just that. The Gemara says Chotamo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Emet, right? The stamp of Hashem is the stamp of Emet. Where is that? It's in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Nun Hey. The Gemara says it. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, out of 13 midot that he has, the one that it becomes his stamp, the one that becomes his midah, the one that he represents himself with, is none other than midat emet. Chotamo shel HaKadosh, the stamp of Hashem is emet. Now, the problem with that is Yaakov Avinu had to deal with a lot of not emet. The way actually he got the Bechorah was a little bit twisted. The way he got the blessings, the brachot, certainly was very questionable. And then he has to deal with Lavan, and he says, Achiv ani beramaut. He says, he says to Rachel, he says, I'm going to be compatible in Ramaut, in tricksterness, with your father, the PhD, the guru of lies and deception. That's what Lavan Arami was, right? Lavan Aramai. So we have to understand exactly how that works with Yaakov Avinu, and how does it fit in the midah of Yaakov being midat emet. This is lashon sagi nahor. His midah is emet. Avraham Avinu's midah is chesed. You find him do chesed all the time. Yitzchak Avinu's midah is gvura, and every challenge that he has is that exactly, right? You almost don't hear anything about him. He's so contained with Midat HaGivura. Yaakov Avinu is Midat Emet, and yet every episode that we find from him seems to be a challenge for us to explain. How is that exactly Emet? How is that exactly Emet? So we have to explain that, and that's something that we're going to try to add a certain maybe color to this and twist to it, what the Zera Shimshon says, as we go through it. So let's begin. The Gemara says in the 11th perek of Masechet Sanhedrin, this is the Sadi Zayin Amud Aleph of Masechet Sanhedrin. The Gemara says there was a place that its name was Kushta. How Atra the Kushta Sheme. Kushta in Aramaic means what? Truth. Emet. And says the Gemara, the reason the name of the place was Kushta is nobody lied ever in this place. Now the white lie, now the gray lie, no lies. Everything was emet. And says the Gemara, Velo mayit inish the hatam belo zimne. No person would die untimely death in that place. No one. Everyone would live until 120, or what's considered 120 based on their generation. No one would have, get cancer and die early, or be run over by a car, or be eaten by a lion. No one had untimely death in the entire city, ever. Unheard of. And the Gemara goes to explain exactly what happened with it. The story the Gemara has is a fascinating story by itself, but for our purposes, Zera Shimshon has a genius insight into why this is. Says the Zera Shimshon, you know why? Because truth and life versus lie and death are very much interconnected. And it goes really to the beginning of the DNA unfolding of the creation. What was the very first sin that happened? The first chet that happened in the world. So we are accustomed to thinking that Chava did something that was inappropriate and listened to the Nahash. That's how we are accustomed to thinking. But the truth is that that's not the first thing. The first thing that happened was Nachash lied. Lying, deception, was the very first sin that happened in the world. Says the Zera Shimshon. יש לומר שהואיל שהמיתה לא באה לעולם אלא מחמת שקר שדיבר הנחש לחווה. Right? What does Nachash say? והייתם כאלוהים. He said Hashem told you not to eat this, not because it's good for you, but because He doesn't want competition. And if you eat this, Hashem achal mizeh ubara et haolam. Which is kfirah. Hashem also ate from this, and He became Hashem. So He knows that if you eat from this, it will have competition. So He said don't eat from it, but nishkafer lech, as they say in Farsi. No, it's not so bad. You eat from it, you'll become godlike, it'll be just amazing. That's a lie. And that snowballed and dominoed everything else that happened afterwards. So the whole death that came to the world was brought upon by a lie, by sheker. And therefore, that is the sign of death. When you stay away from sheker, it brings life. When you attach yourself to sheker, to lie, it's the element of death. Says the Zera Shimshon, Al kel nigzar shebechol makom shenimtza sheker te'eh hamita krova lavo. Therefore, the Gezerah has it that any place that you have sheker, death is hovering around that place, right? And if you stay away from it, then you're staying away from death itself. So it's not just arbitrary that there was a place, its name was Kushta, and nobody died untimely. It's not arbitrary. It's essentially the way the world is wired since the first element of sin in the universe. Umitam ze, dover shkarim lo yikon neged ra. He explains why the pasuk in Tehillim, David HaMelech says in capital Kuf Aleph, Hashem says, dover shkarim lo yikon neged enai. Someone that speaks lies would not be standing in front of me, right? Also, you could explain what he doesn't say, that it says, midvar sheker tirchak. Not just don't lie, but distance yourself from anything that is sheker. Like a person that distances himself from fire, from death, right? It doesn't say distance yourself from gezel, even though that theft is the first avera that always is mekatrek, Chazal say, but it doesn't say stay away from it. It just says lo tikzot, don't steal, don't kill, lo tinaf, don't be immoral. It doesn't say midevar niuf tirchak, midevar gezer tirchak, but midevar sheker tirchak. Run away. Stay completely clear of sheker. Now it doesn't end there, because shemit shedover shkarim tofes umanuto shel yetzer hara. Right? Nachash hakadmoni, the snake, is the format that we relate to yetzer hara, to Satan, to Malach HaMavet. All of those is Nachash hakadmoni. Right? Etio shel Nachash. It's the representation of what we call the angel, that's called all of those three names. The Gemara in Baba Batra says that it's really the same Malach, right? Who Hasatan, who Yetzara, who Malach HaMavet. But that representation is in Nachash, and a person that lies is Tofes Umanuto shel Nachash, shel Yetzer hara. You are adapting the umanut, the job, the midah, the trait of Yetzer hara. And what happened was nitkalel be'arur. That brought upon the first curse in the universe. What was the first curse? Who was cursed first? Nachash. Nachash was cursed first, right? Why? Because he was meshakir. So you see from here, says Zera Shimshon, he makes another linkage over here. That anything that is a lie is linked to a curse. And vice versa. So therefore, he says, therefore you have Chazal that say Masechet Shabbat. This is a famous Gemara also. In Daf Kuf Dalet, page 104 in Masechet Shabbat, it says, Kushta Kai. It says, Emet, truth stands. Truth stands the test of time. That means you could have sheker that is very successful in short time. But like Chazal say, sometimes you have derech aruka uktsara, sometimes you have derech ktsara v'aruka. Sometimes you have a short, long way, sometimes you have a long, short way. It immediately, sometimes you're successful, but then in the long term, it kind of like falls apart. Many people like the instant gratification. There's a lot of instant gratification by lying, right? The gematria of shin is very, very high. It's 300. It's one less than the greatest number, right? Taf is 400. Shin, right? And shin kuvan reish, right, is really the highest combination almost that you could have, right? 600. It's a tremendous, tremendous number, right? It's very exciting. Very glamorous. By the end of the day, first of all, it diminishes in long term, right? It diminishes. Shin, and then it goes down, right? Sheker. But emet starts from very small beginning, right? Aleph is the smallest one, number one, right? But then, next one is the middle of Aleph bit, right? Mem. And then it's Taf, the biggest one. In the long term, it has stability and it grows to become even bigger than Sheker, right? But it's not only that. Shikra lokai. If you have like a 3D imagination of the way the otiot are written, right? Shin has a sharp edge on the bottom. If you put it, it falls. If you put it, it falls. Right? Kuf is the same. It's one leg, it falls. Resh, one leg, it falls. Shikra lokai. Sheker does not stand the test of time. But emet, all of them stand. If you have a 3D aleph, stands. 3D mem for sure stands. 3D taf stands. All of them have two legs, if you imagine it in your mind in that way. And that's, again, nothing that you see from the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat and the Kuf Nuns. You see that there are tremendous chokhmah in the way the Tzurat HaOtiyot are still, right? You see tremendous chokhmah. The Gemara darshins why the Gimel is the way the Gimel is, Dalet is the way the Dalet is, and so on and so forth. The Ran explains it in a fascinating way. But for our purposes, Sheker does not stand the test of time. Shikra lo kaisho. Sheker ba mitzat klala, because Sheker is linked again with Nachash, which is linked with Kilala, with the curse of Hashem. So anything that is Sheker is cursed, says the Zera Shimshon. Eloham adavekim lachen Canaan, right? Canaan, who was the son of Ham. Well, the story of Noah in the Teva and outside the Teva afterwards developed, it was in a way that Canaan was cursed by Noah because of the immoral things that he did, inappropriate things that he did, and Canaan is cursed. Therefore, one of the 5 things, it doesn't bring how many and what, but it just brings the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, the Gemara there on the bottom, almost bottom of Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Bet, the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim says, Canaan gave 5 directions to his children, right? What are the 5? So the ultimate one, the last one, it says you should love lying, right? It says, Al tedaberu emet, do not speak the truth. You want to be successful, don't stick to the truth, right? You should love stealing, you should love immorality, you should love each other, stick together, be gangs, right? You understand? And, hate your masters, rebel against them, and do not stick to the truth. Those are the five items that Canaan commanded his children afterwards, which, again, I'm not sure if he actually sat there to tell them this as his last words, but the Gemara means these are the essences of Canaan. Because Canaan is arur. Anything that is not true is linkaged to something that's cursed, and vice versa. So says the Gemara, that's why he did not want them to stick to something that's blessed. And this is, I think, perhaps his chidush of the Zera Shimshon. It says, you know why you have one time in the Torah, aside from Amalek, that you have a mitzvah of lo techayeh kol neshama. Even, that means when you go to war, you have to obliterate everything. Normally, you don't have that. You go, you win the war, and you win the war, right? There will be subservient, there will be subordinated villages, cities, and countries under you. But sometimes you have a mitzvah of obliteration, complete obliteration. So you have Amalek, and then you have the Shiva Umot, the way we usually learn. Even that is Machloket Rishonim. The Ramban famously says that even if you are fighting the Shiva Amemin, you still have to be Bekarata Shalom. You have to first announce that you're coming in, if you want to be subservient. But if he gets to war, you have to obliterate. Why? So he understands is because they are arur. Something that sticks to sheker, not just figuratively it doesn't have standing, but even physically it will be obliterated. It will be finished. A sheker does not stand. So very profound build-up of Zera Shimshon, how he explains all these chazals, and some of them are the simple understanding, some of them are his insights into how this exactly manifests itself in the way we have it come out in the Gemarot and in the mitzvot of the Torah. And therefore he brings also from the Gemara a very strange Gemara again. It's in Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadi Bet Amud Aleph, the Gemara there says, Kol ha'machalif bediburo, anyone that changes. Now, notice that here it changed. Kol ha'machalif bediburo. You change your words. Stay away from emet. You know what happens? Keilu oved avodah zara. It's tenth amount that you are doing idol worship. Now, this certainly needs a lot of explanation. How did we go from sheker to avodah zarah? Zarah is pretty serious. Okay, well, I get it. Sheker is bad. It's the hallmark of Hashem. It's the hallmark of Jewish people. But how did it become tantamount to avodah zarah? That's a pretty serious accusation. So that the Gemara darshans really from this week's parasha, and this is where the whole thing comes really in connection with Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu is sitting and learning in his room, and that's it. That's what he does. Yaakov ishtam yoshev ohalim, and his mom Rivka Imenu hears that Yitzchak wants to give the blessings to Esav, and she knows that Yitzchak is, let's take sides within the Mefarshim, is misled by the actions of Esav, and really if he would know what Esav is really doing and is really going to be doing, he would never give the brachot to Esav. So she takes charge to make sure things take a different form, unbeknownst to Yitzchak Avinu. And we are told that she was told to do this beruach HaKodesh. Right? It was not just her deciding, but it was an element of nevuah over here that she did it. Right? Now, what happens? She goes and calls Yaakov from the Beit Midrash, says, okay, this is the plan. You go, you bring it instead of him. I'm going to present you and make you look like him with the hairy hands, because Yaakov Avinu did not have much hair, and Esav was like a glima. He was like a goat skin. He had so much hair. So she says, I'll impersonate you and present you to your father as Esav, and you'll get the brachot. And what's the first thing that Yaakov Avinu says? He says, I don't want to do it. I respect you a lot, but this is not true. And if I go and present myself, and then ve'ha'iti be'enav kimtatea, right? And the Gemara darshins that the Maaseh Tatuim is a reference to Avodah Zarah. Hence the Gemara says, Kol ha'machalif bediburo ke'ilu oved Avodah Zarah. We learn that from Esav and Yaakov's story. And yet this is the moment of Yaakov Avinu's development to Yaakov Avinu as we know him. So says the Zera Shimshon, and we're going to come back to this in just a few moments. Everything hopefully will come together. V'yesh lomar shelegabei Yitzchak. So he says, how does this work exactly, right? V'yesh ledaktek baze she'arei Yaakov lo ichlif diburo. He didn't change his words. Rak lavash bigdei Esav ve'em dvarim asuim la'ash'il u'laskir ve'eno nikra hiluf. So he initially answers. He says, Yaakov was very careful. He did not change his words. If you take a look at the Chumash, and if you had more time, I would actually read all the Rashis to you. Every time that he is challenged, he says the truth. He says, first of all, he doesn't change the signon of his talk. The way Esav spoke and the way Yaakov spoke were very different. Yaakov spoke with derech eretz. Esav spoke like a leader. He comes and says, Yakum avi v'yochal mised beno. That's how Esav would talk. Yaakov speaks divret hanunim, right? He says, now please. He says, there's no please by Esav. This is homework for you to take a look in the Psukim. You'll see clear difference. And Rashi actually mentions all of these. And Yitzchak says, that's not Hakol Kol Yaakov. This is not the way Esav speaks. There are those Mefarshim who say their voices were actually very similar. When it says Hakol Kol Yaakov, it says this is not the way Esav talks. So Yaakov knew how Esav talks, but he still didn't change it. He did not change from the way he would speak. Because again, he wanted, Ula yemusheni avi. Right? We have two words in Chumash when you don't want something to happen. Right? Maybe this will happen. There is pen and there is ulai. Right? Pen Pen is when you really don't want it to happen. Pen yifter levavchem. V'sartem. We don't want that to happen. Ulai is a maybe that you're actually hoping that it should happen. So if you're Yaakov Avinu, and you're going in, you say, well, if he understands that I'm actually Yaakov, he's going to curse me. What word would you use exactly? Pen or ulai? You would most definitely use pen, because you don't want it to happen. Pen yemushen yavi. But it doesn't say that. It says ulai. It's as if he's hoping that his father is going to realize that he is not Esav. Because that's the contentment of Yaakov Avinu within Esav. He's told by his mother, based on Ruach HaKodesh, that this is what you need to do. So he's listening to it. But even within listening to it, every step of the way, he's hoping that this should be 100% emet. So I wish he should figure out. Something, hoping against hope. I don't want it, but I want it. His father says, Mi ata, who are you? He says, Anochi. Take a look at the pasuk. Anochi. And Anochi, by the way, there's a difference between Anochi and Ani. Right? Anochi is when I'm talking about my essence, not in relationship with other people. Usually there's a pause afterwards. Anochi is my essence. Ani is me in relationship with you. Right? The Gemara in Shabbat says, Anochi of the Aseret HaDibrot stands for Ana Nafshai Katvid Yavit. I'm hereby writing and giving you, handing over to you my essence. That's the essence. So he says, Anochi, I am who I am. It's my essence. Pause. Esav Bechorecha. Esav is your Bechor. Even when he's saying, I am who you're looking for, he's hinting to him, I'm Yaakov, Esav is Esav. And he does this over and over again. Even when he is halted by his mother, by Ruach HaKodesh, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to say the truth. To say not the truth. To say something that is a little bit twisted. And that's the essence of Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu, everything in life is formed by coming in contact with its opposite. Really, this is a deep concept. The Maharal explains this in the very beginning of his Sefer Gevurot Hashem. He speaks about why Mikura Barzel Me'eres Mitzrayim. Why, if Hashem wants to create the Am Kadosh, a holy nation, you take them to the sin city of the world, which was Mitzrayim. The pasuk in Yechezkel Chaf Aleph Chaf Gimel says Asher zirmatzu sim zirmat besar chamorim besaram zirmatzu sim zirmatam. They were the hotbed of Arayot, the sin city of the world. You want to create a holy nation that's mugdar be'arayot. You take the. Says the Maharal. This is the way I understand. Sometimes Maharal is very hard to understand. It's the way I understand. It says if you want to develop something, you have to bring it up in the vicinity of its opposite to actually create something that's strong, something that is like plada. It actually has stood the test of confrontation of the opposite. And that's exactly what happens with the Avot. If you take a look, and there's not time to go through every episode, but if you go through the life of Avraham Avinu, every nisayon that he has is to develop gevurah. He has to be willing to throw himself to kivshan ha'esh. That's gevurah. For someone that's chesed, it's all about giving for free to people, doing chesed. That's a big nisa. He has to shecht his own son. He has to throw out his own beloved son. He loved Ishmael. He got into a fight with his wife about it. And Hashem had to come and take her side and say, no. Listen to Sarah. He had to constrain. He had to develop gevurah. That was his nisayon. Yitzchak is exactly the opposite. He has to let go. He has to let go of his control and be like a sheep shechted. He has to let go. This week's parasha, he wanted to give the bracha to what he thought was proper son, Esav. he ends up giving the bracha to Yaakov. And what does he say right afterwards when he realizes that it was Yaakov, not Esav? Gam Baruch Yeh. I'm not taking the bracha off. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it to happen like this. Gam Baruch Yeh. I'm reaffirming, reestablishing the bracha that I gave by mistake, out of my control. Can you imagine? That's an nisayon. Try to do that. Relinquishing control for someone that's his whole essence is that. And Yaakov, his essence is midat ha'emet. He's a truthful, honest person. And every encounter, he has to deal with a trickster. He has to get the bechorah that was snatched away from him. He has to get it with a questionable scenario with the Nezita Adashim, the beginning of the parasha. He has to get the brachot with a very twisted format, the way his mother told him to do, which sounds pretty bad. Then he had to live for 20 years with the greatest gangster and trickster alive. And he comes afterwards and says, Im Lavan Garti, v'tariach misvot shamarti. I lived with him, v'lo lamati mima'asav hara'im. And I was not affected by him. That is development of a nation that is midat emet. That is a tremendous, tremendous power into Yaakov. And that's the essence that we have, you know. It goes at the end, again, I went on a little tangent because we wanted to explain this, the way we ought to look at it. But the person that's machalif bedivuro, he explains why is it ke'oved avodah zarah? Why is it like an idol worship? And it brings because by goyim it says Tehillim Kuf Mem Dalet, it says asher pihem diver shav. But by Jews, the famous pasuk in Sfanya Perek Gimel, it says she'erit Yisrael yasu avla velo yedaberu chazav. The Jews do not do crookedness, and they will never speak lies. That's she'erit Yisrael. And therefore, if you change from the hallmark of a Jew, you'll become a person that does not relate to the Jewish nation. Now, the Gemara says in Masechet Baba Metzia Daf Chav Gimel that there are times that the person has to change. Sometimes Mesharim Mipnei Shalom. Of course, the Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Ketuvot that says even if the kala is ugly. Now, what do you say? You say kala na'a v'chasuda. So Bet Hillel, we pass like Bet Hillel, say, oh, what a gorgeous, beautiful, amazing wife you married, right? Shalom. There are times, again, the times that the Gemara tells you that you would have to be Meshaneh Mipnei Shalom.
White lies are okay?
Not that white lie is okay. Is sometimes, and the Gemara says, the Talmidei Chachamim, they are in 3 items. They will change from the Shalom. Not that they lie. Change for a overriding reason. So it's not that I never change anything. No, there are times that you have to be smart. But that by itself is the definition of a Jew. That when you are caring about the Shalom Bayit of this person, that is a long-term emet. It's not that any white lie that becomes a selfish thing for me. None of the things that are mutar is a selfish thing. None of them. Not one. None of the reasons are selfish. It's all for a greater thing of Klal Yisrael, to see the bigger picture, to be able to say, okay, this person will be embarrassed if I say this. Or it will be haughty for me to say, if they say you finish Shas, I'm like, I'm working on half of it, right? You didn't say lie. Even if you finish Shas, you're still working on half of it, right? Do you know Shas? I know half of it. Which half? Whatever half you want, right? You could say it like that. You could say, because that's an exercise of humility. And it's not a lie. Or if it's the truth is going to hurt somebody else. Someone is so open-armed for everyone that comes to host them and so on, and they can't say no to people, but they'll get overwhelmed. And they hosted you, and someone says, how was it? And if you say exactly how it was, then there will be harassed by people, or things of tzniut. Those are examples that the Gemara gives. None of them are selfish. So that becomes an anecdote into saying the truth, but this is the formation of our nation. Even when Yaakov Avinu must, it has a gun to his head to say something, and that's all, every single test that he had was dealing with crookedness. But that is when you deal with it and you come out successful. That creates the DNA, that creates really the mahut, the essence of the person in the way they're going to be in future in their life. And that's really something that when you had by Yehuda that we said in the very beginning, has also the hallmark. The Gad Naur says Yehuda, who became the king. What was the greatness of Yehuda? Right? Reuben was supposed to be the king. He was the Bechor. He lost it. For whatever reason, he lost it. Shimon lost it. Levi lost it. And Yehuda almost lost it. Yehuda was guilty of a lot of things. He probably had more wrongdoing than other ones. But there was one episode that got him all the way an eternal king of Klal Yisrael. Why? Ata yoducha achecha, shehodita velo boshta. Because he was modeh al haemet. He confessed to the truth in a moment of weakness, or moment of strength, however you want to call it, in the most embarrassing moment of his life, for saving somebody else. He said, it was me. To establish the truth. So it's not just the hallmark of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the hallmark of Yehudim. We are called Yehudi because of Yehuda. Yehuda was called Yehuda because Shehoda velo bosh, because he could stand and establish the midah of emet, to be proud of the truth, even though that it pained him so greatly. He chose the derech aruka uktzara, the long short way, starting with Aleph but ending with Taf, starting small, a moment of weakness, but building a future that stands forever and ever. Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda u'mechokek mi ben raglav, that until the Mashiach's time, every king and leader is going to be from Shevet Yehuda, for that one episode that he stood for Midat Emet. The importance and the emphasis of Yaakov being Midat Emet is something that carries us and follows us through our lives, even nowadays and even for the rest of our history. B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zochet to that. Amen. Keni ratzon chazak u'baruch.